The galaxy was a tapestry of empires, alliances, and unyielding competition, a chessboard of power where even the smallest move carried monumental consequences. The Zarith Collective had long prided itself on its superior fleets and mastery of strategy, believing no force could truly challenge their dominance. That confidence, however, began to erode the moment the message arrived. Caution, arriving human war vessel, the alert read in sterile, automated text. Yet the simplicity of the warning carried a weight that silenced the bustling bridge of the Zarith flagship. 4 years, humanity had remained an enigma, a species late to the interstellar stage yet uniquely disruptive. Their territories were modest, their technology uneven, some of it laughably primitive by galactic standards. But the whispers of their victories, the stories of their defiance, painted a picture that few dared to dismiss. From his observation post, the Zarith tactician watched the ship's arrival unfold on the holographic display. It was massive, its scale dwarfing any known Zarith vessel, but it wasn't the size alone that unsettled him. The ship's hull, a dark matte surface that seemed to devour the starlight, exuded an almost predatory aura. It carried no visible markings, no banners or symbols of allegiance, only an overwhelming sense of purpose. "They call it the Aegis," one of the junior officers muttered, breaking the silence. The name hung in the air like a challenge, a promise of protection and destruction intertwined. Unverified, the tactician replied sharply, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. He was tasked with analyzing threats, deconstructing enemy strategies before they could unfold. Yet this was different. Humanity had sent no prior warnings, no diplomats or envoys, only this ship, a lone titan gliding into neutral space with deliberate intent. The bridge crew scrambled to decode the incoming transmissions. The humans had broadcast an automated message, a calm, measured voice urging caution and non-interference. It wasn't a threat, not overtly, but it carried an undercurrent of finality. "Do not approach." The tactician's many eyes flickered as he studied the data feed. The ship's energy signatures were erratic, fluctuating in ways that defied standard analysis. Its propulsion system was unfamiliar, and its weaponry, if the energy spikes were indicative, was off the charts. Yet it moved with eerie precision, each shift in trajectory a calculated step. "What do they want?" one of the commanders demanded, his tone laced with frustration. "Surely this is posturing. Humanity knows they cannot challenge the collective directly." The tactician remained silent, his gaze fixed on the readings. Posturing? Perhaps. But something about the ship's movements suggested otherwise. This was not a species prone to empty displays of bravado. As the vessel closed in, maintaining a steady but deliberate pace, the tactician couldn't shake a growing realization. This wasn't just an arrival, it was a declaration. Humanity wasn't asking for recognition or respect. They were claiming it. For the first time in centuries, the Zarith Collective felt the cold bite of uncertainty. The Zarith fleet responded swiftly, mobilizing an escort group to intercept the human vessel. Their ships, sleek and angular, reflected the cutting-edge efficiency of their engineers. Precision and superiority were their hallmarks, traits they intended to showcase in this encounter. Orders were clear: observe, assess, and, if necessary, force the humans to retreat. From the observation deck, the tactician monitored the unfolding engagement with a mixture of anticipation and unease. As the Zarith interceptors closed the distance, the human ship remained motionless, an unyielding silhouette against the stars. Its stillness was unnerving, almost as if it were daring the Zarith to act first. "Signal the vessel," the fleet commander ordered, his voice sharp with authority. The standard diplomatic overtures were sent, requests for identification, declarations of territorial boundaries, and warnings against intrusion. The response came moments later, not in words but in action. The Aegis moved. It wasn't an attack, not immediately. Instead, the vessel performed a series of maneuvers that defied standard tactics. It rotated slowly, its massive frame pivoting with eerie grace, then began a lateral drift that disrupted the Zarith formation. The maneuver wasn't overtly aggressive, but it was deliberate, creating gaps in the interceptor's positioning. "Adjust formation," the commander barked, irritation creeping into his tone. The Zarith ships moved to close ranks, but the human vessel's unpredictability continued. It accelerated suddenly, then decelerated, weaving through the interceptors with an elegance that belied its massive size. The tactician's eyes narrowed as he analyzed the patterns. It wasn't random, every move was calculated to confuse and disorient. The humans weren't just evading, they were studying. "Deploy a probe," the commander snapped, frustration mounting. A sleek Zarith drone shot toward the Aegis, its sensors calibrated to scan the ship systems. It didn't get far. Before it could complete its approach, the human vessel released a pulse of energy. The probe shut down instantly, its systems fried by what appeared to be a controlled electromagnetic wave. The tactician leaned closer to his console, intrigued. The energy signature was unfamiliar, a blend of frequencies that suggested a level of precision he hadn't anticipated. The humans had neutralized the probe without firing a shot, a display of capability that was as subtle as it was effective. "Enough of this," the commander growled. "Prepare a test volley." Before the order could be executed, the Aegis acted again. This time, it initiated a maneuver that bordered on impossible, a sharp rotation combined with a burst of acceleration that placed it behind the Zarith formation. From this position, it released another pulse, harmless to organic life but enough to temporarily disable the interceptor systems. The fleet was effectively paralyzed, its ships adrift as their systems rebooted. The tactician watched in silence, his respect for the human crew growing. They hadn't fired a single weapon yet had rendered a superior force helpless. "Withdraw," the commander finally ordered, his voice tight with reluctant acknowledgement. The Aegis remained motionless as the Zarith fleet retreated, a silent sentinel watching its would-be challengers scatter. The tactician's thoughts were a storm of analysis and admiration. Humanity's methods were unlike anything he had encountered, strategic, unconventional, and devastatingly effective. They hadn't simply won the encounter, they had rewritten the rules of engagement. A transmission from the human vessel finally arrived, piercing the silence that had settled over the Zarith fleet. The voice was calm, devoid of emotion, yet it carried an unshakable authority. The message began with an acknowledgement of the Zarith presence, followed by an invitation to disengage peacefully. It wasn't phrased as a plea or a demand, it was a statement, unflinching and absolute. The words that followed were unexpected. Rather than threatening or posturing, the transmission shifted to something almost philosophical. It spoke of humanity's history, their struggles on a small, fragile planet that had nearly destroyed them. It described a species that had faced extinction countless times, not from external enemies, but from their own choices. Wars, famine, environmental collapse, each crisis had shaped them, hardening their resolve and sharpening their ingenuity. The tactician listened intently, each word carving a deeper impression into his thoughts. This wasn't the language of dominance or conquest, it was the language of survival. Humanity had evolved not as conquerors but as survivors of their own recklessness, a species that had learned to navigate chaos and emerge stronger. "Do not mistake our patience for weakness," the voice concluded, its tone unwavering. "We value peace, but we will not hesitate to defend ourselves. Your actions will decide the outcome." The Zarith commanders dismissed the message almost immediately, interpreting it as nothing more than empty rhetoric. The tactician, however, couldn't ignore the undercurrent of truth in those words. There was a conviction behind them, a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. This was not a species that bluffed. Despite the warning, the fleet's higher command insisted on testing the Aegis further. A small contingent was sent to probe its defenses, a calculated move to provoke a response. The tactician watched, uneasy, as the Zarith ships approached the human vessel. The response was swift and precise. Without deploying any visible weaponry, the Aegis unleashed a targeted wave of energy that enveloped the attacking ships. Their systems shut down instantly, engines sputtering into silence. The human vessel then broadcast a second message, this one shorter but no less impactful. This was a warning. "Stand down." The tactician observed the disabled ships, their crews unharmed but completely at the mercy of the human vessel. It wasn't just the technology that impressed him, it was the restraint. Humanity had demonstrated its capability without crossing the line into lethal aggression. This was no accident, it was a statement of control. The Zarith commanders seethed, their pride wounded by what they saw as a humiliation. Yet the tactician saw something far more profound. This was humanity's strength, not just their power, but their ability to wield it with precision and purpose. They didn't fight to dominate or destroy, they fought to endure, to survive, and to make their presence known. As the human ship maintained its position, the tactician found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about warfare. This wasn't just a conflict of technology or strategy, it was a clash of philosophies. And humanity's philosophy was proving to be as unyielding as the stars themselves. The Zarith fleet convened for what they believed would be the final confrontation. The higher command, unwilling to accept the humiliation inflicted by the human vessel, authorized a full-scale engagement. To the Zarith, this was a matter of pride, a need to reassert their dominance in the galaxy. Yet beneath the bravado, an unspoken tension rippled through the ranks. The Aegis remained motionless, its dark hull an unbroken monolith against the stars. It had not advanced nor retreated, holding its position as if daring the Zarith to act. The fleet's commanders saw this as a sign of weakness, a target ripe for overwhelming force. But the tactician knew better. Every move the human ship had made so far had been deliberate, calculated. To assume otherwise was to invite disaster. The Zarith ships began their approach, weapon systems primed and shields raised. The plan was simple: encircle the Aegis and overwhelm it with a concentrated barrage. The tactician observed in silence, his unease growing with every passing moment. The human vessel made no attempt to evade or defend itself, allowing the Zarith fleet to close the distance. Then, as the encirclement neared completion, the Aegis acted. Without warning, the ship emitted a gravitational pulse, a phenomenon so sudden and immense that it warped the space around it. The Zarith ships were caught in its wake, their formations collapsing as their systems struggled to compensate. Ships drifted off course, their weapons rendered useless by the spatial disruption. The Aegis moved with precision, slipping through the chaos it had created, positioning itself at the fleet's core. From this vantage point, it unleashed a second pulse, not an attack, but a disruption. The Zarith ships went dark, their systems entirely disabled. Engines stalled, weapons fell silent, and the fleet was left adrift, powerless. The human vessel broadcast its final message, the voice calm and measured yet carrying an undeniable weight. "You were warned," it said. "We do not seek conflict, but we will not be provoked without consequence. This galaxy is vast enough for coexistence. Choose wisely." The message ended, and for a moment, there was only silence. The Zarith commanders, stripped of their ability to retaliate, could do nothing but watch as the Aegis drifted away, its engines propelling it into the void. It had achieved total dominance without firing a single destructive shot. The tactician remained at his post, his thoughts a whirlwind of analysis and reflection. Humanity had not simply defeated the Zarith, they had demonstrated a level of control and restraint that was utterly alien. The Aegis could have annihilated the fleet, yet it had chosen a different path. This was not weakness, it was power wielded with purpose. As the Zarith ships slowly regained functionality, the tactician turned his gaze to the stars where the Aegis had vanished. Humanity had proven something far greater than technological superiority. They had proven their mastery over the very nature of conflict. They fought not to conquer, but to endure, to protect what they valued, and to leave an indelible mark on all who crossed their path. In the end, it wasn't fear that lingered in the tactician's mind. It was respect.